hush around us. I see glory on each face. Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. I can feel his mighty power and his grace. I can hear the rush of angels' wings. I see glory on each face. Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. Thank you, God.
For today's invocation, I'm going to read a poem by Sheelan Harkin called Read the Fine Print. Some days I awaken so certain of the world's goodness. This poem is a reminder for those other days when I need to convince my stubborn mind that all is well. Let me present the evidence. Have you noticed all the fastidious care that went into pinning up so many stars to decorate the night sky? What did that? And the way all of nature has a tidiness to it, even gnarled trees, even dirt. Or sit a moment and puzzle over the masterful origami of each flower and think, what cosmic interior decorator chose that gold for those rolling hills? And before that, who thought up tenderness? Who is it that came up with all those colors, and what genius said autumn? My only simple conclusion as I sit amazed at the pileup of gifts is that we're part of a great contract of goodness, and there's love written into every atom if you get close enough to read the fine print. Now let's affirm together our first two principles. There is only one presence and one power in our lives and in the universe: God, goodness, omnipotence. We are God expressing such inherent goodness. And our mission statement: we teach and live universal truth, unconditional love, and abundant life.
Today's absolute word is realize. I'll read the affirmation. I realize that I am fully divine. Now let's say that together. I realize that I am fully divine. I've had many an aha moment throughout my life when something that had befuddled me for years suddenly became clear. It may have been something that they tried to teach me in school, a skill that I practiced and tried to master as I grew, or even an idea that changed my understanding of the world around me. Whenever I realized something new, I could feel my world expanding. I could feel the world opening up before me in fresh and exciting ways. It made me eager to discover even more. On my spiritual journey, I feel a similar excitement as I realize I am so much more than a spark of the divine. I am fully divine, just as I am fully human. I feel newly alive in this realization and so very grateful for it. Today's scripture is from Genesis chapter 28, verse 16. Then Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, "Surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it." I'll read the affirmation again. I realize that I am fully divine. Together, I realize that I am fully divine.
Today's thank you goes to the garden team, who was out there again yesterday beautifying our garden. And next week, we have Rock and Roll Sunday featuring music from Queen. So get ready next week for some fabulous music of Queen. And putting on my other hat for the YOU Legacy Rally, as we announced last week, we are hosting the first National Youth of Unity event since the quarantine, starting July 28th and going all the way through August 1st. The infamous Legacy Rally, where teenagers from 13 states and over 150 ministries gather to learn, grow, and have fun. On Thursday, July 29th, we are hosting dinner for our guests, Texas style, by having a chili cook-off. The participants with the best chili will earn not only bragging rights, but also take home a special prize crafted by the rally participants. So if you ever wanted to truly know whether beans belong in a chili or not, this is your opportunity to prove us either right or wrong. Sign up for this special chili cook-off competition after service at the Community Engagement Desk in the Fellowship Hall. And finally, if you would like to sponsor this Legacy Rally, you're welcome to make out a special contribution and leave it with Lane at the Community Engagement Desk. Then on Sunday, August 1st, in celebration of the conclusion of the Legacy Rally, we are inviting you to participate in our first church-wide potluck since the pandemic. This is open to everyone. All dishes are welcome. No one will be turned away. So bring a favorite dish or cook to impress, and don't forget to wear your stretchy pants. And that's all for the announcements today. Now let's enjoy some more music brought to you by our wonderful music team.
Blue sky smiling at me, nothing but blue skies do I see. Bluebirds singing a song, nothing but bluebirds all day long. Never saw the sun shining so bright, never saw things going so right. Noticing the days hurrying by, when you're in love, my, how they fly. Blue days, all of them gone, nothing but blue sky from now on. Blue sky smiling at me, nothing but blue skies do I see. Bluebird singing a song, nothing but bluebirds all along. so right. Noticing the days hurrying by. When you're in love, my how they fly. Blue days, all of them gone. Nothing but blue sky from now on. The duty da do da.
And now it's my great pleasure to introduce you to our guest speaker for today, Rabbi Jonathan Siger. Rabbi Siger was born in Boston and raised in New York. He is an alumnus of the Portledge School and graduated from Brandeis University with honors, and is also a graduate of the Second City's Conservatory of Improvisational Theater in Chicago, where he also worked as an assistant producer. He received his master's degree and later his rabbinical ordination from the Hebrew Union College in 2002, and is a member of the Central Conference of American Rabbis, representing the Reform movement. Rabbi Siger is the spiritual leader of the Congregation Jewish Community North, serves as the District 1 lead chaplain for the Harris County Sheriff's Office, and is involved with many interfaith and intercultural dialogue programs. Please join me in welcoming Rabbi Siger.
Good morning, everyone. Very nice to see you all virtually, as it is. A pleasure to be back with you. And wow, you know, I have my guitar here and I've got band rehearsal later. So I feel like I'm in a tough spot. I've got to first off follow Irving Berlin in that performance. And somehow I've got to do all of this in the knowledge that you're about to have a rock and roll Sabbath next weekend with Queen. So what can I talk about to make it completely different? I'm going to talk about probably the most depressing day of the Jewish calendar. One of the just as a preface, one of the things that I find most enjoyable about visiting with Unity communities is that there's an awful lot of commonalities, in particular with Reform Jewish practice. Our focus on the universal aspects, an approach that is open and progressive, theologically, and dedicated to the idea of ultimate oneness and really unity. If you think about it, the watchword of the Jewish faith is a section from the Bible that proclaims God's oneness and sort of this indivisible absolute. So I think we're already compatible in a lot of ways theologically. However, there is also this tension of particularism, just as you would be justifiably and correctly proud of your particular community and the people of that community and your individual traditions. Of course, as an expression of Judaism, we are invested in Jewish history and Jewish culture and keeping our particular folkways alive. That being said, I'm meeting with you all today on Tisha B'Av, the 9th day of the Hebrew month of Av, which in Jewish tradition is the saddest day of the year. It's a day that is traditionally observed with a complete fast, abstinence from food and drink, including water. One would not wear leather shoes even, which is seen as a sign of comfort and luxury. Would avoid marital relations. Let's see. Food is probably the worst thing for me. Like, wait, leather shoes, not a problem, especially, after 18 months on the pandemic, like wearing shoes. Why would I wear shoes anyway? However, it was seen as an example of how one mourns. And I wanted to speak this morning with you a little bit about the history of that day. It seemed appropriate only in that I'm speaking to you, and it is what's going on in my mind and heart, but also because the importance of the lessons that it teaches us with regard to mourning rituals and the wisdom that it contains and how we work through grief and how we keep ideas alive. Now, it's interesting. I'm seeing myself on the monitor, which is unusual for me. Usually I stare at the camera and it's on a slight delay. So forgive me if I'm a little disoriented, but I will work through it. Let's start with what this day is about. And this day, and as I said, the Hebrew months have different names. Av is a month that usually falls around this time of year, give or take a few weeks. That's why if you have Jewish friends, or in the past, I've spoken with your community and other Unity communities, and if you've had any interaction with rabbis or people in the Jewish community, you're like, wait, Hanukkah moves around, or our Jewish holidays move around. Some years they're in early September, some years they're in late September, much like our Islamic brothers and sisters with Ramadan. I mean, the holidays, since it's on a lunar slash solar calendar, not to confuse anybody too much. So it may move around, but it's always during the summer. And as I said, it's a really bad day. Why is it such a bad day for us? Well, according to tradition, oh, let's see, never mind. I was gonna share a screen with you. Let's see if I can do that. I cannot. Okay. As a participant, I cannot share the screen with you. However, on this day, we learn that, oh, let's see here. I'm sorry. I'm just making sure that we're not having any issues here, because I think we probably do want to replace the pin, but I will hide my self view so you all can see me. Sorry about that. I should be okay. Oh, I can. Excellent. All right. Yes. Okay, I'll do it in a moment. Okay, so according to Jewish tradition and history, a lot of really bad things happened on this day. The first is that the Babylonians destroyed the first temple in 586 BCE. That led to the Babylonian exile. Students of the Bible, you may be familiar with this because the prophets talk about it a lot, starting with Isaiah and Jeremiah. Ezekiel writes about this, his experiences there. We then return, and we have a nice little run for a few hundred years, and maybe about another 500 years almost. And the Romans destroy the second temple in the year 70 AD. And when that happens, well, things are really bad. In fact, there's a famous picture that describes it, sort of, and this is, of course, I believe it's Hayez's painting of this from the 19th century. Obviously, this is not an artist's rendering of the events as it happened, but it's fairly close to what we believe happened. If you look at the bottom left of the picture here, if you can see it, you'll see some people carrying off the menorah. And on the Arch of Titus in Rome, this is celebrated with a carving of Judean captives being led back to Rome, and the menorah features prominently. That menorah, that candelabra, was the national symbol of the Jewish people. It still is, in fact. The state of Israel uses it as their national emblem. An idea of, the mission of Israel, the people, one would hope the state as well, but the people in particular, and the faith, to bring light to the world, to bear witness to the 7 days of creation, the creator itself. So there it's being carried off. More tragically, you've got a lot of people dying and being thrown off of the altar as the temple is sacked and destroyed by the Romans. So that's sort of the mood of the day, is remembering how that happened. One might think, oh, well, it's, kind of like a remember the Alamo kind of day for the Jews, which means, you get to remember the Alamo and you get to remember the 9th of Av, among other things. But that is by no means the end of the litany of bad things that have happened on the 9th of Av. a few hundred years after that picture is set, there was another revolt against Rome, which led to really the destruction. I mean, people had survived the first war against Rome in 70. In 132, the Judeans revolted again. They were rather successful. They were led by a man named Bar Kokhba, was his nickname. It means son of the star. He had a religious advisor, Rabbi Akiva, who is one of the greatest rabbis of antiquity and of his generation for sure. Both men were martyred, both men died. And as a result of ultimately the failed rebellion, something like 500,000 Judeans were killed. Jews were permanently banned from Jerusalem. They changed the name of Judea to Palestina, which is actually where the name Palestine originates. So they were going to blot out not only the people, but they wanted to blot out all memory of the nation. They minted coins of a woman sitting under a palm tree in chains, celebrating the capture of Jerusalem. There is some talking that the marching hip hip, hooray, hurrah, hip hip, stands for Latin for Jerusalem is lost, or Jerusalem has fallen. Jerusalem es perdu, or something. My Latin is terrible. Greek, it's not so bad. Hebrew, Aramaic, I'm good, but I can't really pronounce the Latin very well. So to this day, right? I mean, these are catastrophes. Through the Middle Ages, the Jews were expelled from Spain. Turns out the 9th of Av. The Jews were expelled from England, I think 1290. 9th of Av. The 9th of Av comes back again and again and again. And some of them are probably more legendary than historical, but others are actually historical. I mean, that's the day that it happened. So the 9th of Av becomes a catch-all for sort of all of the terrible things that have happened. And it is a day that, as I said, is a complete fast day. It is known as the dark fast, or sometimes they call it black fast and the white fast. I don't like that, probably because, I don't want to be like woke or anything, but I think that there's this, cultural problem that we tie up when we call something black as being necessarily negative. So, but dark side, light side, I don't know. Just bear with me. I'm trying to do my best as being a, middle-aged progressive theologian, my imitation of my daughter and her generation. But the idea is that you've got a negative fast and you've got a sort of a positive fast. And the negative fast is Tisha B'Av. We're sad. We're not happy. We're so upset we can't eat. Versus on Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, which many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with. That's also a fast day, and it's a solemn day. We're supposed to be reflecting on our own failings and not eat, but it's not supposed to be as sad as today is. That fast is ultimately a fast of purification. So there's an element of it that is like, it's good. Like, we're fasting because we feel bad and we're doing this important work and we're going to be forgiven because this is a day where we appreciate the chance to try again, to start over. There's this undercurrent, even though it's kind of negative and like it's still kind of depressing. It's less so than today. Today is like the day where you just remember all these horrible things and like who could eat, who could play music, who could really even try to look happy. And I'll come back to why we've lessened this in a few minutes. Some of the practices are also the study of certain texts. The first is Lamentations, which, if you've read any of the Hebrew scriptures and you've read Lamentations, let me tell you, not a feel-good book. A very difficult book. Sad, depressing, beautifully written, but evocative and visceral, and it really gets you right in the kishkas, as we say. It gets you in the guts. Another book that is often read, and I found this fascinating, not in my particular community. I am of European tradition, certainly over the last 1,000 years. But in the Spanish-speaking communities, the Sephardic, the Mediterranean Jewish communities, the book of Job was often read, which I find incredibly insightful. The book of Job, in a nutshell, is why bad things happen to good people. It tries to explain it. And it tries to explain it first with some supernatural goings on, implies that sort of that there are angelic powers out there. The idea of Satan or Satan, the devil, basically, although not the same way that Christians conceive of it, but the idea that there are spiritual forces that test us to try and make us look bad in front of our Creator. And it sort of starts there, but it doesn't really end there. The book of Job is, I believe, in some ways uniquely unsatisfying, and yet really important and somehow comforting in a weird way. In that the takeaway is we don't know. We don't know. We have no control over why bad things happen to good people. You can do everything right, and something bad could still happen. And how do you deal with it? All you can do is accept that happens. And it's a really hard thing to accept, especially if you're not of a level of maturity that I don't think I've attained yet. I still get bothered by injustice. No one gets pulled over. The way you see people drive, I'm sure you don't have these problems up in Dallas, Fort Worth area. But down here in Houston, let me tell you, I see a lot of bad drivers. So how come I'm the only one who got pulled over for speeding recently? Just because you're good all the time? Actually, I deserve that one. That one, yeah, I'm working through that. This is now my faith community. I thank you for indulging me. The idea, though, is if you weren't speeding, you still might have something happen, right? You get a flat tire, and it's not your fault. Something happens, but you drive responsibly. How come you see all these people driving crazy and they don't have any problems? Well, you just don't know, and that's a really silly analogy. But you go to the darker ones, or the ones that we are all familiar with. There are people that take great care of themselves, and something catastrophic happens, and you don't understand why. And other people seem to never have a problem. We can't explain that. And one of the lessons that it would seem that some of our religious sages would have us focus on is that you can't explain certain things. There's just tragedies happen, and they happen to good people. And it's sometimes really kind of fruitless and an exercise in more self-torture, trying to find reasons for things that are beyond mortal comprehension. At the same time, it does not relieve us of an obligation to do everything we can to lead good and decent lives. And also, and I've come back again and again to this idea, to live with an attitude of gratefulness and to cultivate gratitude. And so one of the things that happens over the course of this day, on the 9th of Av, is that the day starts as though you are all in a house of mourning. If you went to a house of worship, we're not wearing the pretty prayer shawls that you may have seen pictures of people wear. We don't wear those. We don't wear, there are little prayer boxes. They're basically kind of amulets, but they're called phylacteries, a good Greek word, that in traditional communities, people wear them on their head. You get to pretend to be a unicorn first thing in the morning. That's one of my favorite things about Jewish tradition. And also on the arm, you may have seen pictures of that. If not too important, but that there is traditional garb and ancient religious practices, but they're seen as things that you do on happy days, and things that are filled with a sense of pride. And on this day, we're not proud. On this day, we're sad, and we're mourning all the terrible losses that we've had. So you don't wear them in the morning. But as the day goes on, the restrictions on how we express ourselves are lightened. And so by the afternoon, something which would be unusual, then you're wearing it. So the community will start to wear these things as the afternoon goes on, and as the evening comes on, and as the day ends, most of those restrictions are lifted. And that's where we come to a sense of why I find it so valuable, even in communities like mine, where we don't necessarily mourn with the same level of observance or strictness that earlier generations or more traditional communities might do. We do still mark it, and we still do pay attention to it. I'm in a smaller community. We didn't have a program this year for Tisha B'Av, so this worked out well, or I might not be able to join you this morning. But the lessons are still there. They're still very important. And there is so much wisdom in how we ritualize and mark grief that has an impact on the way that we approach grief in our individual lives. And that's what the takeaway is that I was hoping to share with you this morning. When we think about still remembering these things, by the way, I was looking, I think I referred to the Alamo, which was 185 years ago now, maybe. Hard to believe, but right, almost 200 years, getting there. And we remember it. And as we remember it slightly differently, right? Our understanding of the circumstances as we learn more about the era and you know, some of the mythology of it we confront. We're coming up on the 20th anniversary of September 11th, which is humbling in a lot of ways. I'm sure for many of you as well. And we think about how the world has changed and how we have generations of people that do not relate to it the same way those of us that remember it do. Those of us that may have lost people, those of us that you know lived through that may be either from New York or as I am, but originally, or have lived there since then. But the way that the world has changed, everything's changed. And you have 20 years we were talking about recently as a nation dealing with withdrawal from Afghanistan. Those of us that have friends or family or have connections to military service, what it's been like for 20 years. I mean, that event changed the world. It certainly changed our country in ways that those of us that lived through it can really remember what it was like. My wife will often remark about how you don't ever see in the movies anymore the person running through the airport to get to the gate to stop the person they love from getting on the plane to go back to Iowa or whatever the story is, that big romantic ending. Could never see that again in a movie. It would be a very different kind of movie as they were tackled and seized onto by, you know, military dogs and, you know, pulled off for questioning. So there are little things, but even things like that were cultural tropes that we remember. You know, the Hertz commercial, the Avis commercial. That's how the world's changed. Will those resonate with people 200 years from now, 500 years from now, 1,000 years from now? I mean, who knows how something like 9/11 would be remembered, or even the Revolutionary War, or Pearl Harbor, or any of these catastrophes. Now, if they'd all happened on the same day, maybe that would help combine them all. But things change. So here is the Jewish community 2,000 years later, still keeping the memory alive, enough so that like I can talk about all these things that happened. Part of it is because of the ritual of it. Part of it is because these traditions have been passed down, because this is what you do on this day. And because it was sort of codified into a religious practice, the act of memory, the act of conscious memory becomes an aspect, it becomes a religious practice. That memory itself is a religious practice. So you might think, what does your religion teach? Well, my religion teaches meditation. My religion teaches acts of service. My religion teaches certain songs, certain prayers. Well, I mean, my religion, many of our religions, but religion teaches as a practice, as a spiritual practice, the conscious act of memory, physical actions, and behavioral actions that are dictated by the tradition in order to concretize that memory, right? That you act it out physically, we act it out with the words and the stories we tell, we act out in a way that we remember it. And sort of those feelings of if you're able to fast, like the hunger pangs or the discomfort, and trying to simulate that feeling of grief by doing the grieving practices to put you back in that place. And that's by way of actually a way of healing, keeping the lessons alive, and also giving our losses and our suffering meaning. All of which are very, very valuable in the eyes of Jewish tradition. But again, as I said, I think there's a lot of universal truth there. When we lose something personally, when we lose someone we love, when someone we love dies, or we suffer some other kind of large loss. And you know what? It could be a job you love, could be a home, any number of things. Frankly, as we get older, we lose the ability to do certain things. Whatever it is, any kind of loss brings with it the sensation of grief. The question is, how balanced is that grief? Is it proportional? Is it healthy? Right? If I stub my toe and I say I can't work for 3 weeks because I stubbed my toe, you might think there might be something else going on, as opposed to, I've come down with mono. Then, okay, then you should stay away. It's a little bit different. So you want to make sure that the reaction is proportional. And you also want to note that grief is like a storm, particularly a storm, say, by the sea, where waves are more violent. The surf is rougher, and I know we're all relatively inland. Perhaps you all more than me, but let's still go with the analogy. The waves come quickly, and they're forceful, and then they're still fast, a little less forceful, and then they start to slow down, and you still feel them. And they may be less predictable, and they still come at you, and you don't want to turn your back on the ocean. You want to see the waves coming and be aware of it. And then eventually it becomes more regular again, and you're more prepared for it. You're like, oh, here's the tide. I know what the schedule is. And it's less surprising, but it never goes away. We're still going to be reminded of our losses. We're still going to be reminded of how the world changed. And each of these things can trigger a response. But as time goes on, from the onset of grief, from the initial shock of grief, say the day that the Romans destroyed Jerusalem, or any of these other bad things happened, and the weeks following, and the months following, and the years following, and then the centuries following, the people that lived through it, they die off. But you remember the stories that your parents tell you or your grandparents tell you. And then they become a little bit more the stuff of legend and communal memory. And communities change, and history becomes more and more ancient. That pain is lessened. But you don't want the memory to be forgotten, because there's so many important lessons there. And it's important to keep memory alive. It's one of the ways that we show love for our ancestors and for our culture and our heritage. So we do strive to remember, if you're, wherever you're from, specifically regionally, of course, Texas, I shouldn't joke about it. I'm sorry. I don't mean to make anyone angry. But the Alamo, right? The history of the state, or, as Americans, or frankly, we just did Juneteenth, the big deal, right? Big deal. Remembering that experience, particularly important to us because they're sort of local events, but also as Americans, and then things that happen in the world that we remember. We keep these things alive through ritual and through structure. And as I said, the Tisha B'Av is a structured day. It's religious, it's heavily structured. We do that as well with grief. When someone dies, we have traditions. Many of you may participate in wakes. People have wakes. We don't have wakes exactly, but we have funerals with set rituals. We have a period of time where people visit at the home called Shiva or Shiva, the 7 days traditionally. But people will usually spend a few days at home welcoming visitors, just in a state of mourning. Then you have restrictions on the first month, and then the first year of grief. And then every year, there's a day where you pause, you light a candle, you go to synagogue, you recite the special prayer, and you have this ritualized way of remembering someone. It's meant to model how grief works through us. It's very intense, and then it's less intense, but it stretches for a while. And then it still lingers. And then there'll be something that reminds you. And rather than run away from it, be like, oh, that's old history. The only way that I can heal is to forget about it and move on. We say, no, the only way to move on is address the injury. and to remember, because there may be lessons involved. And there are, of course, great lessons that we have taken from our particular tragedies. There is a piece to find personal responsibility. What could you have done that contributed to this, which is important? And secondly, what are the lessons that we take away? And for the Jewish people, it was importantly that our religion does not depend on a building, on a structure. The temple was important. Jerusalem was very important. Jewish Commonwealth, which for 2,000 years we didn't have, was important. But what that looks like and what we take away from the lessons that we've learned and how do we apply them to keep the values alive and the folkways alive and the mission alive is far more important than simply being sad because, our nice building got destroyed or that our civilization changed because of violent upheaval. I mean, that's just what happens. But if you're rigid and you can't adapt and you can't work through the grief because you either deny it or you let it overtake you, there's no way to thrive. There's no way to endure. And so that's Tisha B'Av. That's an awful lot of information with an awful lot of history to share with you. But it's the kind of thing that I think does apply not only in the Jewish community. When we mark things like 9/11, which is coming up, we have, of course, Memorial Day. We have somber days in the American secular calendar. And those of you that come from more traditional Christian traditions or are familiar with it, which is probably an easier thing to refer to, that the period of Lent, right? Or, ironically, like Good Friday, like there's I speak a little Catholic. My stepfamily was raised with a lot of Catholics. That there are mourning processes as well. Ash Wednesday. I mean, so it's rolled into it, and every faith tradition has that, a way of marking your losses. It's just for the Jewish people, as I said, it just so happens that a lot of it happened on this one day, which is unfortunate, but it does make it rather convenient to have one really, really sad day every year. And I am going to conclude my remarks with that, only saying that we talk about a nechemta, which is to do something that brings comfort. That is important to bring comfort to mourners. And as the day progresses on Tisha B'Av, we get some of that comfort by lessening the physical ways in which we grieve, wearing, prayer shawls or not sitting on the floor, or the music gets less depressing. We end on a message of hope and comfort. This has been a wonderful nechemta for me, getting to be in a community, doing something that is unusual, which is always a treat for me, and being in a position where, what could be more humbling than to say, hey, look, on Tisha B'Av, you're going to get to speak to people that aren't necessarily Jewish about Jewish tradition and what it means and what this day signifies for us. What greater evidence could there be, or an opportunity for me to respond to the tragedies of this day by saying, yeah, the Jewish people not only are alive and well, but you're out there like sharing it with people. So it is a tremendous blessing to me. So thank you. I won't get too choked up. I'll save that for an award show. But thank you for being here and supporting each other in such a beautiful community. We need this more than ever. And I will continue now with a brief meditation, hopefully lifting us up out of what may have been a little bit more depressing than you had signed up for. Apologies to Irving Berlin and your magnificent musicians. Okay. As you get comfortable, try and center yourself and let your hands relax if you rest them on thighs or sort of with your palms open, nice and relaxed. As you're able to, try and settle yourself back in your pew or on your chair at home. Planting your feet relaxed but firmly with contact on the floor. And we're going to follow our breath for a few counts. Nice and relaxed. Drop your shoulders. If you need to move your neck around a little bit, help your neck and shoulders settle. Breathe in through your nose gently. Let it fill your stomach. Hold it and then gently release the breath through your mouth. Breathing in nice and slowly for 4 count. 4, holding gently and releasing. Again, in through your nose, filling your stomach, filling it behind your rib cage, holding and releasing. Gentle waves of breath. As you feel your breath moving through your body, wiggle your toes, let them relax. Lift your ankles off the floor and relax. Raise your knees, alternating little and relax. Feet back on the floor. In your chair, just slightly adjusting your hips once again, telling your hip, your lower back to relax. A good breath in. Hold and exhale. Up your spine, base of your spine. Reaching towards the ceiling now, just slightly. Lifting your back and your head up in your seat and relax it. Shoulders, feel them heavy, dropping towards the floor. Relax your forearms, your wrists. Wiggle your fingers a little bit. Shake off that spiritual dust. As you continue to follow your breath, visualize an amber glow. The color of honey, glowing. Warm. Descending from above you, entering at your forehead, this glow, this light pouring into you from the center of your forehead, just above where your nose, your eyes meet the top of your head. Filling you with your breath, drawing that light in, feeling it fill your body with healing energy. with restoration, with energy, with power, with resilience and compassion, this amber glow spreading out through you, branching out, filling your arteries, capillaries, branching out, filling your entire being down through your hips, your knees, into your feet, and connecting that amber glow above you, coming through your body, through your head, through your being, through your joints, and emanating from beneath you, pouring out through the soles of your feet and spreading out and joining the glow of all those that surround you in a community linked, joined, drawing strength and cycling that healing energy, that amber light of divine will and creation, joining you as individuals brought together into a unity of light, of hope, and of potential. And as you're ready, pull back in that amber energy, draw it back in, and concentrate it. Feel that light becoming a small star resting right there in your solar plexus. And you're going to keep it there for when you need it. And as you're ready, you can open your eyes, you can shake out your hands, you can come back to this plane of existence as you find yourself ready to take on the rest of your day.
Thank you, Rabbi Siger, for bringing some humor to such a difficult topic of grief and sharing some history and ritual from your faith. Let's show him our appreciation. If you would like to contribute to what we are doing and what we are about, you can do so right now as our ushers come around. We know that many of you already give online, so feel free to place your hand over the basket to bless our offerings. If you would like to give today, feel free to do so in any way you choose. Now together, let us bless our offerings. Divine love flowing through me blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. I am grateful.
Birds flying high, you know how I feel. Sun in the sky, you know how I feel. Breeze drifting on by, you know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life for me, yeah. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life for me. Ooh, and I'm feeling good. Fish in the sea, you know how I feel. River running free, you know how I feel. Blossom on a tree, you know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life for me, and I'm feeling good. Dragonfly out in the sun, you know what I mean, don't you know? Butterflies all having fun, you know what I mean. Sleep in peace when day is done, that's what I mean. And this old world is a new world and a bold world for me, yeah, yeah. Stars when you shine, you know how I feel. Scent of the pine, you know how I feel. Oh, freedom is mine, and I know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life for me, and I'm feeling, oh, I'm feeling, you know I'm feeling so, I'm feeling good.
It's been such a gift having you with us today. Join us for fellowship after service down the hall. Remember to sign up for the chili cook-off and show us your cooking skills for the potluck. Be safe, stay well, and have a wonderful week. Please rise as we sing our peace song, followed by the prayer for protection.
Let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be, with God as creator, for me all around. Let me walk with my Father.
The light of God surrounds us. I am the light of God. The love of God enfolds us. I am the love of God. The power of God protects us. I am the power of God. The presence of God watches over us. I am the presence of God. Wherever we are, God is, and I am.